Welcome back, everybody. In today's chapter, this week's chapter, we are going to look at the human body differently. We're going to look at things differently because we're going to understand what exactly it's a vessel for, which part of the soul, and it's a metaphor for the spiritual world, which creates the world which we live in. So we're going to also understand what happens in the higher spiritual worlds at the same time. So let's start reading inside. After we explained, when we look at the parts, a little bit in regards to the Uris, the lights. The lights is like a soul. You know, you have a device and you have the electricity. So the electricity is the light, which gives its energy. You have a cup and water, and the water inside the cup is like the light. You have a soul and a body, and the soul gives life to the body, so that's the light. So now we learned a little bit about the lights of Abba ve'ema, of the father and mother, which is insight and comprehension, which is Chachma and Bina, which the vessels for that are the right brain and the left brain. But they reside in those vessels. And we learned a little bit about them. And we also learned how when they interface and they connect and they attach, the way they attach internally and externally, when they attach internally, it gives rise to souls coming into this world. So when in the world of Atzilus, the father and mother, which is the insight and comprehension, spiritual insight and comprehension connect, and souls get brought down into the world. And Contagious, when they connect externally, then things just go on. The day goes on, you get a new day. Now we're going to explain the parts of the lights of Zoh, which is small faces, which is the 6 emotions of Atzilus, which are called Israel or Jacob. And basically, it's different modes. Israel mode is when the subconscious is aligned with the intellect. So even if a person gets startled, the behavior is aligned. And Yaakov is a person that's still working in the process of aligning their subconscious, but they haven't been fully aligned yet. So a person could get startled, and then the behavior may not align to the intellect. That could happen. So Israel is in mastery, and Jacob is in process. And we learned the parts of the connection between Zun. Zun means Zer Anpin, the small faces, and Nukva, and the Nukva actually Nekev means a whole. So it's the feminine aspect, and when they connect, things happen. In other words, when masculine and feminine connect, a higher energy comes down from the essence of God. And these connections can be on different levels. You can have a connection of masculine and feminine on different levels. Shenikra Yichud Yisrael v'Leah. You can have the unification between Israel and Leah, because Leah is the way the feminine is in its source in comprehension. And Israel, we said, is when a person's subconscious and gut reactions are aligned with the intellect. So it's like a high form of connection, a deep intellectual connection. That's called Yisrael and Leah. And Leah represents the godly, the divine feminine. Or Yichud Yaakov Rachel. Or you can have a unification between Jacob and Rachel. Rachel represents, Rachel represents the divine speech. See, Leah represents divine thought. Rachel represents divine speech. And Jacob is the idea of Zoh, the masculine energy, but being in the process of mastery. So it's like a lower level. And Rachel is speech. So that's also more of a revealed level. And so basically when they connect, so different things happen. When Yisrael, Leah, certain things happen. And when the connection is more of a Yaakov and Rachel connection, then there's different energies come into the world. You do it like this is known. lahavin hakdama binyan eretz v'kelim b'chlal. But first, we need to understand a preface in regards to the idea of lights and vessels. Well, in general, what are they? I explained that a little bit. Like the electricity is the light because it gives the energy to the vessel to function, right? Of a prat, and we need to understand in the parts what is lights and vessels. The hine yedua, we're going to learn a lot more about lights and vessels from our own body. So hine yedua, it's known. Pirush masha amar diyu v'chayu ihad. There's a saying that God and His lights, chiyui represents lights, are one. He is one with His lights. Hine eres, viu garmui ihad, and He and His vessels are one. Garmui means vessels, and that's. In other words, in Atzilus, there's perfect vessels. In this world, not necessarily do the physical things match up perfectly. Not necessarily do the physical things match up perfectly.
What do you mean that physical things don't match up perfectly?
Well, for example, the astronomy, there's a calendar and there's the astronomical events, and you can make a perfect calendar, but the astronomical events which match that calendar are going to be slightly off because the vessels in this world don't match perfectly to the way it is in the spiritual worlds. They're a little bit off.
Okay, can you also go back to Rachel, the difference between Rachel and Leah, and what's the difference between the outcome of Yisrael and Leah versus the outcome of Yaakov and Rachel?
Well, we're hopefully going to speak about that more. So Yisrael and Leah is more of an internal connection in the mind. It's a higher level, so the energy is going to be more of an inner energy, and Yaakov and Rachel, it's going to be more of a revealed lower energy. I believe I believe we're going to speak about it more later on. And what was the other question?
Oh, what's the difference between Rachel and Leah?
So Rachel, Leah in Hebrew means nila, which means tired of thinking. You know how thoughts just keep on going and going and going. So that's why Leah in her name represents the idea of thoughts. It's the feminine aspect of thought, which is really comprehension.
Is it tired of thinking?
Yeah.
As in exhausted.
Yeah. You know, analyzing every single aspect of everything in every situation.
Mm-hmm. And Rachel?
Rachel is God already audible speaking. God already speaking, which that is already the created world. You think and then you speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Rachel represents God speaking. It's pretty amazing. She represents the Shekhinah. She's a vehicle of the Shekhinah. Now, I want to point out there are vessels of the commandments, and when a person does a vessel of a commandment, if that commandment is being done properly according to the law, then that vessel is a perfect vessel for God. That would also mean ir v'germu ichad. Hein bechinas hakelim, u'mitzad bechinas ha'eres the esesfiris b'chlal v'prat nikra esesfiris blima. So girmui is kelim, is vessel, mitzad bechinas ha'eres. However, the light, when we speak about the light of Atzilus, they're called in general and in the parts. They're called the 10 spheres blima, with the 10 spheres without a definition. Ma means what? Blimahus. In other words, the lights of the 10 spheres, the way they are in Atzilus, they're just a potential state of anything. So they're really infinite. So that's why they haven't been defined yet, till they actually create something. Like we say in the prayers on Friday afternoons, the Lav Mikol Inon Midas Klal. He is not any of these 10 spheres. Don't make the mistake that God is any of these 10 spheres. He is not any of these 10 spheres. He just chooses to express himself using the 10 spheres. But in the way they are in Atzilus, they're an infinite because they haven't been used yet. However, when I look at the vessels, they are something concrete. They do have a definition, because a vessel limits a certain energy. And this is what it says. 1 second, somebody's calling me, and I'm gonna have to tell him to call back later. Okay, 1 second. Where is the? Hello? Do you hear me now? Yeah, you're back? Okay.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. So the Kalim vessels do create a definition. This is what it means. Apik yutikunin, he is Aramaic. Apik, he took out 10 fixers. In other words, they fix him. In other words, the man makes the suit, but the suit expresses the man. So that's why the suit like fixes the man, you know. So he created 10, he took out 10 fixers, the 10 spheres, and he called them 10 sapphires, 10 spheres. Lachza, in order to be able to reveal his light. To run the worlds, etc. And in general, the 10 spheres of Atzilus, they are called they're 4 names of God. The first name of God, the dominant theme of it is insight, Chachma. The second name of God, the dominant theme is comprehension, Bina. The third name of God, the dominant theme is the 6 emotions. The fourth name of God, dominant theme is the feminine energy. So, and basically the way you get these is you can spell Yud K Vav K, Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey, by spelling each letter out fully. And then you can spell some of the letters differently. For example, a Hey, you could spell Hey Yud. And if you spell at Hey Yud, so the numerical number of adding up all those letters, you'll get Ab, which is 72. If you spell it, which then the dominant theme is the Yud, the idea of the dot, the idea of insight. If you spell it Hey Aleph, okay, Hey Yud Aleph. No, Hey Aleph. Then the dominant theme will be Aleph is like the idea of an interface, communication. So that will, if you add that up, it will be Sag, which is 63, and the dominant theme of that will be comprehension, which that is the source of communication, of wordsmithing. Then if you spell Hey with a Yud K Vav. Oh, the Vav, you can also spell Vav Yud Vav. So there's a way of spelling it, and it ends up being 45. And then if you spell it Hey Vav, you end up with 45. Then the dominant theme of 45 is emotion. And then if you spell it Vav Hey, then the dominant theme of that will be the feminine aspect of leadership. And that will be Ban, which is 52. So that the Ab Milu Yudin. So if you write, you fill up Milu, you fill up the spelling of the Shem of God's name with Yuds, you get 72. B'chachma, and the theme will be insight. V'sag, 63, Yudin Va'aleph, you spell it with Yuds and an Aleph. Bebina, and that then the dominant theme is comprehension. Ma b'milui alpid, say yes. Ma 45 is spelled with Alephs. You fill up the haze with Alephs. Bazon, the dominant theme is the masculine emotions. Van and 52 b'milui hain, and you fill up, you write hey and vav vav b'malchus, and that represents leadership, which is a feminine trait, like it's known.
Can you explain the concept of why leadership is a feminine trait when we normally associate leadership as a masculine trait?
That's true. But you know, a mother leads her kids naturally, right? A mother leads her kids. So a leader has to be a little bit of a nurturer, a little bit like a mother that runs. Also is a mirror of everything above. So a good leader has to be able to interface with his people and to be able to communicate all the energies that are above and shine them and be an example for the people. So that's also a little bit nurturing.
You're saying both because he's a recipient, which is a feminine aspect, the recipient for the divine wisdom from above him, and also his nurturing his followers are both feminine aspects.
Yeah. So people sometimes get confused in this, and they say, well, in every we say in every group of 100 people, let's say 10%, you'll have men which have some strong feminine traits, and you'll have women with some strong masculine traits. That's okay. They just have to use them at different times of the day, and you can go be a vessel for different defined energies at different times according to the role that you're supposed to be doing. So a person can realize what is the role expected of me now in my position, and maybe I need to be more masculine, maybe I need to be more feminine in this present role, and then a person becomes a recipient of the appropriate divine energy as they take responsibility for that role. So it's not like people are stuck in a certain way. When a person has a behaves in a certain way, they create vessels in a certain way, so they get more masculine energy. Let's say you have a man who has a lot of feminine energy, but he realizes that for certain roles he needs a lot of masculine energy, so he needs to just do masculine behaviors. That means masculine vessels, and that will bring down masculine energy, and he's going to be able to do that role in a more masculine way. And then when he needs to use his feminine energy, so he does more feminine things, like artists perhaps, and he'll bring down the feminine energy needed for that specific role and the specific sensitivity for that role, and then he can go back and do vessels that will make him more masculine. Can you do it like it's not? I hope that clarifies some confusion. Uveloshin Hazayar Klal Esesphiris Nikra Raza Deshmakdisha Bilvad. And in the language of the Zohar, we say that the general 10 spheres are called the secret of the holy name, Bilvad. Can you do it like it's known? By the way, all of this is only because of vessels. Dafka specifically Kiyadua. In other words, the only definitions that God will take is because he creates vessels and limits. Now we're going to explain how it works. Let's explain how it works. Yadua, it's known. A mimer, the Tlas Shiltin Leila. It says that there's 3 Shiltin sultans, right? Sultan, English word sultan means a ruler. So there are 3 Shiltin Leila, there are 3 rulers. Umeicha v'liba v'kavda. What are these? So our body is a vessel We're made in the image of God, so we're a vessel for that. Moicha, the brain, v'liba, the heart, v'kabda, the liver. Shehein bechinas gimel kelim. They are actually three vessels to the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, the three parts of our soul that are inside our body. Nefesh means like breath. Ruach is the wind. No, neshama, sorry. Neshama is breath, like neshima. Ruach is wind, and nefesh is spirit, let's say, quote, spirit. Neshama b'meicha, the neshama dwells in our brain. Our brain is a vessel, and just you can understand how vessels work in Atzilus. V'ruach b'liba, and wind is in the heart, and the heart we mean the entire respiratory system. V'nefesh b'kavda, and the nefesh is in the liver, and we mean the entire digestive system, including the blood going around the body, is also nefesh. However, there are two more souls, chaya, and the chaya means life, v'yechida, and the more of the core of a person, it's beyond our kelim. Basically, chaya is on your clothes, and all humans have divinity in chaya. It's on their clothes. The yechida is person's more core and essence. Is as far as you stretch out your hands. And each vessel has a head, middle, and end. Yes, the internal aspects of the vessel, the middle aspect of the vessel, and the external aspects of the vessel. By the way, the internal aspect of the keli, so actually the brain is like a layer. So the most internal aspect of the brain is actually the external aspect of the vessel, which is more of the chicken brain, the reactive brain, the movement brain. People call it the lizard brain. And then above that, there's an emotional brain. That's the middle vessel. And then there's the internal vessels is actually the forehead. It's the layer way above that. Animals don't have a forehead. We have foreheads because we have we humans have a forehead because that is the internal, the most inner vessel of the brain. That's where we do the cognitive thought. Like it's known, Binyan Ramach Evarim the Malka. Now it's known, we say the king has 248 limbs, just like a body. A man has 248 limbs. So God, we're made in the image of God. So the God creates or positions himself into 248 limbs. So let's turn the page. How's it work? The test spheres, we're going to take 9 spheres. 9 spheres, we're not going to include Malchus. We're going to include 9 spheres, not including the reflection, which is the feminine aspect, just the 9 spheres. And we're going to say that the masculine 6 emotions, small faces, they really have 9 spheres. Shetes pamim tes, Pei Aleph. 9 times 9. Now each 9 have a 9 of itself. So 9 times 9 is 81. Each one of the 9 has their own 9. So we now have 81. But each vessel has an internal and middle and external aspect. So Gimel Pamim, Pei Gimel, Pei Aleph. So 3 times 81 neged gimel madregas, corresponding the 3 levels in the kelim, in the vessels. Ra Rosh Techseif, which represents head, middle, and end. And by the way, it's an English word, because if you read this word Rosh Techseif, backwards, the word is store, to store away, because you store away in vessels. So you store away. And also another word in Hebrew is Hester, to hide away. Hester means to hide. It's like the English word history, which you hide God. God is hidden in history. And it's 3 vessels, head, middle, and end. So Euler Ramag, now, so 9 times 9 is 81, times 3 for the 3 vessels, you get 243. And there has to be growth, otherwise nobody's alive. So it needs to be 5 aspects of growth, of kindness. Huramach becomes 248. So that's why we get 248 positive commandments in the Torah. And there is a sefer, a book called Sefer Acharedim, and that lists which mitzvahs, which commandments correspond to which part of the body. This is the idea of the vessels of Zah, of God. Gufa the Malka, which is the body of the king. When we do the commandments, we capture, in a good way, the body of the king. And also these spheres. So basically, we understand the dynamics of the spheres of Atzilus and how they're captured into 248 vessels. But they also have clothes which God established. From these clothes, souls fly. For example, thought is a clothes because you keep on changing your thoughts. So it's like clothes you put on. So basically, we humans are clothes for God, because when we do a behavior, when we do a commandment, we then are a garment that God puts on. We become a garment that God puts on. I mean, if we're just looking at ourselves, then the command, then the mitzvah is a garment which we put on ourselves. But if we're looking at them, that's the macro. That's if I look at myself. But if we look at the macro, the bigger picture, we humans are clothes of God, and He puts us on when we're doing the right thing. As when explained, Akol, everything, va'amnam, and however, in the Indian urban the idea of a light in a vessel, if we look at the holistic picture, even though there are many different ways to understand idea of light and vessel, in general, you can understand that it's similar to the idea of the ability to the spiritual ability to see. Ruchni. Now, then it gets enclosed and it gets measured out in actual physicality, in the actual vessel of the actual physical eye. And then we have physical sight. Based varim. 2 things happen when the ability to perceive becomes enclosed in the eye. It gets turned from something spiritual to something physical. Sharais Gashmi Yitves Begeshem, because of physical seeing can capture physical objects. Which is not the case with spiritual seeing. You can see way beyond. Today I was learning that souls of Atzilus can like see through things. And also the light and the power of the intellect, which is spiritual, then when it gets fit in the physical vesicle of the brain, and then it becomes into intelligence. So intelligence as we know it, it's the light gets limited inside the physical brain. And the power of movement gets limited into the physical movement. And similar things, similar metaphor, and also the power of growth, which is the spiritual, then it gets grafted on and gets enclosed in physical sprouting, an actual physical plant. Now that's one thing. But base, the second thing which happens is inyan hagbala v'shir shebechemer akli mugbal, that there becomes a limit in the actual physical vessel. It becomes nimdad b'shir, gets measured in a certain amount. For example, physical vision at shisha milim, you can see till 60 kilometers. Check this out. So basically, when the light hits the back of the eye in the retina, so certain rods on cones, that's what I was told, get like burnt up, and then they send a message to the nerve, optic nerve, and then the optic nerve sends a message to the brain, and then the brain recreates the picture. The problem is between the pixels of the back of the eye, if something's further enough, it gets lost between the pixels, so you can't see so far. The objects get lost because there's no pixel in that space between pixel and pixel, like rods and cones in the retina. That's why we can only see till 60 miles, 60 kilometers. I mean, and also the idea we can see further than 60 kilometers, but you miss things, right? And the idea of intellect and physical movement, mispashtim bagbala, they move in limits. It's contracted. Dafka specifically, bagbalas. For example, the energy will be like used up. Geshem hasagas kliyameach, because basically the brain can't handle any more information, and it's basically not going to be able to comprehend anymore because of the limits of the vessel at that time. I mean, if just your prefrontal cortex cannot handle too many things at the same time. How many things can you weigh up at the same time? Probably about 2, maybe more. I mean, not much more than that, because the vessel is very small. And also it will become smaller, and it will stop the power of movement. Hagashmi, the physical power, that comes from the power of the hand in a movement, or with the limits of picking up something heavy, and similar ideas, because of the limits of the power of movement. Which is not the case if you look at the essential power, spiritual power of movement, of the guy that moves, hatnua, the movement, it actually doesn't have limits. Perhaps it doesn't even have a stop. It's not like you might run out of gas. And I'm giving you a proof. He says, I'll give you a proof from picking up something really happy, which happens in a state of fear. Pisaimi, a sudden shock of fear. Then what happens is the person will be able to pick up much more than he's then his ability mitzad bechinas ham makif, like because of the energy of the chaya, which is makif, means around, which is around the body, which is energy of the chaya. So basically, when a person, the stories of mother being suddenly scared, and because a child is stuck under a car, and this little mother picks up the car. Where did she get the energy to pick up the car? Well, she had that energy all the time. It's around her body in the chaya, and the chaya, her personal atzilus. That's your personal atzilus around your body, and that personal atzilus in a state of shock goes into the body, takes over the body, and lifts up the car. Afterwards, it was since it was overwhelming the vessel, a person is going to feel sick. Like the vessel is going to be like, whoa, too much. But at that moment, the superpowers around the body will go inside the vessel, overwhelm the vessel, give a person superpowers for a limited amount of time. And when a person does training, what happens is they're improving the vessel. That more of the energy which is outside the body should go into the vessel because the vessel is better. So similarly, the power of thought, which is around the brain, which is more powerful than the power of thought, which is inside of the brain. So when you put a lot of effort into thinking, so it becomes the vessel, the physical vessel makes more neural connections, and it becomes a better vessel and it gets more surface area to pick up more of the liquid around the brain, and because it's like more squished up. When you squish something up, it gets more surface area. So when the brain gets more surface area, it can handle more liquid coming in. And then what happens is spiritually, the vessel is able to get more intellect from outside of the brain. And that's why a person will become more intelligent when they do mental effort, and they become more strong when they train, because the vessel, the physical body, will become more of a vessel to be able to take more of the energy which is outside of the body from the chaya.
Can you explain? I have a question here about the personal atzila. Could you explain that?
Yep. So a personal. So we said that there are three worlds: the world of thought, the world of emotions, where things are planned, and the world of implementation. So those three worlds are actually mirrored in our body, because we have our brains, which is the world of thought, and we have our respiratory system, and the way we breathe differently creates different emotions, right? Actors learn how to breathe differently to create certain different emotions, right? So our respiratory system is the world of emotion, and then the implementation system is the locomotive system, is our digestive system in our blood. And so our body mirrors the three worlds. But then there is the divine world, where God establishes his personality in order to be able he emanates his personality in order to be able to relate to us. So we also have a personal divine world, and that's around our body. That energy, that aura, they call it, the aura around the body. And in the aura, you can have bad stuff, good. You could have the gun. Whatever person does, it's there. But also the divine aspect is there as well. And that's a personal atzilus. That's our little personal atzilus, which is a metaphor for the real atzilus. So with that, through that soul around our body, we connect to atzilus. And I'll say it's like this: in order to connect to our personal atzilus, we need to have good thought, speech, and action. So whenever we do good thoughts, like we say words of Psalms, King David Psalms, let's say, right? So we create little angels around with every thought, and that connects to our personal atzilus, and then the energy runs from our personal atzilus and comes into our brain and feeds our brain. We need to eat breakfast, so our brain also needs spiritual energy. That is by doing good thoughts. By doing good thoughts, then our personal atzilus can go through that interface that we created, that thought, then into our brain and feed our brain. And then our brain gives energy to our heart, that we should be more sensitive to spirituality. And then it also goes down to our actions, that we're going to end up doing the right thing. So people think, oh, willpower, do the right willpower. Well, it doesn't. It's really, you have to do it things smart. You want to control your behaviors, feed your brain from your personal atzilus by doing good thoughts. Learn good things. Go to a shir of Torah. Pray to God. Do a bunch of things. You don't just eat one food. If you just eat one food, it's not going to be good. You have to have a variety of food. It's the same thing. When you need to feed your soul spiritually, do a variety of good things. And they're going to connect to your personal atzilus, and that divine power is going to go inside your body and is going to feed your body from the brain to the heart and then to your liver. And then you'll see you're doing good things, and it's easier to control yourself. Right?
Thank you. Any further follow-up question? Okay.
V'chein hu kol inyan chayme v'tzura. Now, this whole idea of chaymer, which is matter, v'tzura, and tzura is the energy which shapes it, the matter. So tzura means shape, right? It shapes the matter. Sha'chaymer milvad hu ba b'shinui hamahus. The chaymer, the matter, is like something really different from energy, even though we know that it's really all the same, but it presents itself differently. Shinui mahus. V'nei hu magbil l'tzura. It basically limits the tzura, the spiritual energy inside it. Aval ha'chemer hu mein v'dugma ha'tzura. But by the way, the matter has some sort of connection to the spiritual light inside it. Because, for example, the matter of the vessel of the eye, lires, in order to be able to see, and the actual matter of the vessel of the brain, it's set up wires. You need, it's like wires, and you need insulation in order to get short-circuited. So you need some cholesterol. The cholesterol is the insulation around the wires. If people destroy their cholesterol, then they're going to have short circuits. They're going to have memory problems. You need cholesterol, good cholesterol. It's needed for the insulation of the wires. And then you need the wires where the electricity runs. So it's designed, the actual design of the matter of the brain is designed to fit the light. Lahaskil, to be able to think, and similar things. So the actual matter, nasa mehis avos, it happens through a thickening, vakshama, and physically shel tzura of the light, haruchni, spiritual light. Misev kol adregas shebe, from the lowest level of light, misev shel madrega haruchnis hatzmecha. For example, the lowest spiritual level of growth, of plant growth, nasakeh hatzmecha begeshem. From that comes the energy of sprouting physically. Misev shel chayes haruchnis de nefesh hamelubish bedam. The lowest level of the breath, which is enclosed in the blood. It says that the blood is the breath. The spirit, right? The lowest level of intellect, spiritual intellect, the lowest level of spiritual intellect is able to interface with the actual matter of the vessel, of the brain. Haneshama haruchnis, the lowest level of the neshama, the breath, of the neshama, neshima, the breath, the spiritual breath. One second. Sefer neshama, the ruchnis haria of spiritual seeing, the abia, the the ability to perceive things, memuzeg b'chemer ayin, gets interfaced in the actual physical eye. Certain people, for example, let's say a person is like a person is in hospital, and the reason why they're there is because their vessels don't necessarily match the soul, but it sort of still matches, but not completely, so it can't reveal itself properly. So what sometimes happens is that the soul is there, and it's not limited by the vessel because the vessel is messed up a little bit, but the person has total intellect and total hearing of the situation, and that's because it's sort of connected with the body, but the body is not a perfect vessel, but it's fully there. So therefore, yeah, you have to be careful what a person says in front of somebody who's sick in hospital, because they may be able to perceive anything with superpowers. And this is why.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you just repeat that and clarify that? I have a question over here. What do you mean by that?
I mean that a person, when the vessel, like let's say the vessel is connected to the intellect, right?
Wait, so you have a person lying in the hospital. So what are the vessel you're referring to?
Brain.
Okay.
So the brain, let's say, is a little bit messed up, right? So then you'll see the person going in and out, in and out. But when it's
a person has a concussion, or he's partially unconscious, or he's unconscious completely. Okay.
But when it's like out, like the vessel is out, but it's not. So the intellect is generally there, but the vessel is really not a vessel right now. But you can't say that it's not a vessel either. It's not like totally squashed either. The soul, the intellect is connected to the vessel, but is not limited by the vessel at all. So the person has super awareness and super intellect.
Following? So his brain is, if I could try to the brain is debilitated in a certain aspect, but his intellect is still functioning. So his intellect, since his brain is no longer a fully functioning vessel for the intellect, which is the power of conceiving ideas, then it's no longer bound by the limitations of his brain, physical brain vessel, because that's not really functioning. And now he's able to perceive things beyond the capacity of the brain. Does that make sense? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So therefore, if a person's lying there and he's unconscious, he got a head injury, and you thinking you could talk about him because he doesn't understand what's going on. But even though he's not conscious, he's not moving, he's maybe has a machine helping him breathe or who knows what, but his intellect is still present and is able to perceive things. It could actually hear and grasp what you're talking about. So he's saying you have to be careful. You can't talk in front of this person about him because he's hearing it, even though according to all the signs of the machinery, his brain is not functioning as it's in its full capacity.
Right. And I'll give you an example. By autistic people, sometimes they don't interface with other humans, but they interface with where they were before they were born very well. And they have a tremendous perception of spirituality. So their vessel is damaged, but that on the other hand, it's not damaged to the point that they can't be alive, but their intellect is sort of able to function on its own without that vessel, and you see that they have like tremendous knowledge of spirituality, of the world, of the spiritual world. Of course, that's not the greatest situation. The optimum situation is to heal the vessel of the brain, so the soul will interface, and then they will be able to refine the body. Yes, they won't be so spiritual, but they will be able to be more social and get, do things, interface in this physical world. And therefore we see, I just want to just point out. So sometimes some of these people interface, but they have superpowers because of maybe Asperger's or something. They have a little bit of superpowers, super calculation powers, because it's not necessarily inside the physical vessel of the brain that these calculations are happening. So v'zois anureim, and therefore we see b'chol makom, in any place, buying hagbalas hachemer im hagbalas hatzura. So the limits of the matter comes together with the limits of the spirit. Kechad mamish, they become like one. They become totally interfaced. That's what we want to say. That's the normal way. Kamei b'hagdalas chemer kli aguf, when the physical matter of the vessel of the body grows, shenigadlim beyachad in gidul their body grows together with the light, v'chayas, and the energy, hatzura, of the spirit, haruchnis, the spiritual spirit. For example, the growth of the preparing the matter of the brain, lefi erech gidul v'atzura, is according to the light and the spirit shel haseichel, of the intellect. Shekasher yigdal hatinek, because when the child grows, vitzmacher seichel, in his intellect, the light of the intellect sprouts more, baruchni, spiritually, automatically there's going to be a growth in his actual physical brain.
So the spiritual ore is growing first. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And then that triggers the physical growth.
Yeah, growth at the same time. Yeah. That triggers the physical growth, and then the physical be a vessel for the spiritual. So, a tall person will have certain energies of leadership because their bodies are showing on a certain energy which is inside their body. A person with a big head, I'm not saying necessarily they're going to be more smarter than other people, but generally they will. They will, because it's bigger. There's going to be a greater potential for intellectual pursuits with the greater size of the brain. And I'm not saying intellect is the be all and end all. There's also the heart. It's also the heart. And what makes a person human is an interface between the brain and the heart and their feelings and emotional intelligence. But there is something to say about physical size. It does show on something spiritual. So therefore, I do pay attention, when people have a bigger head size. I say, oh wow, you have a great potential. God gave you potential, this vessel, to bring down a lot of light. And also time. Days tell a story. In other words, when a person has a lot of experience, days tell a story, Verev Shanim, a lot of years. What happens is, so sometimes the brain gets bigger because the surface of the brain gets bigger. In other words, the head size doesn't grow, but there's a lot of surface area because there's a lot of folds in the nerves, and therefore they can soak up more of the subdural fluid, which will make a person think more optimally, but it's going to show on their face. It's going to show on the face the person's wise. When the vessel grows, ima'er, with the light, every single day, as ein shana, till 70 years. So person's intellect, we're always a student, till 70 years, a person's still growing. Sheba l'chlalos gadlus hamechin, person comes to gadlus hamechin, great intellect, at 70 years old. Obviously, they were working on it the entire time. So a person who's working on their perception and on their intellect and they're working on themselves to be a better person, they will reach a great gadlus hamechin, a wide perception of reality at 70 years old. So always worth listening to somebody who's over 70. There's going to be a lot of wisdom there.
That's what the Torah says. We have to stand for son to respect the person over 70, no matter who they are.
Yeah, yeah. Doesn't matter doesn't matter which culture they come from. Any human over 70, they achieve something.
Wow. So you mean old age is not something to be feared, it's something to be embraced and looked forward to.
Definitely, a person can become more effective at old age. So definitely the retired people should keep on working because they can be more effective.
Right. Or do teaching or learning Torah.
Teaching or learning Torah, donation, they should need to be active.
Right.
A person who retired needs to be active in their skill set. Right. And to contribute.
Beautiful. Okay, anyone have any questions? Put them in the chat box. Any questions? We don't have any questions in the chat box. Okay.
Is this interesting? Because now this gives a person a totally different way of analyzing reality and looking at the physical.
Yeah, we're nodding our heads over here. You can't see us, but we see you. A question asked here: is it true that there's no word for retirement in the Hebrew language?
Absolutely not. No such thing. No such concept. Nobody should retire. Even if they stop one job, they should not stop working every day and getting up and contributing in their skill set. Because now they have as time goes on, they get a better skill set.
Right. It's very interesting because you see that in farming families, the old people, they stay involved in farming all the way as long as they're physically capable of coming out to do stuff. I mean, they pass it on to their children and their grandchildren, a lot of the heavier stuff, but they stay involved. And it's really interesting that the concept of retirement is really just the concept of the whole Marxist idea of measuring people by their productivity. So they calculate that, well, a person over a certain age is no longer as physically productive as a young person. So let's take them out of the workforce because they're not as productive as someone else and put them at the pasture, so to speak. But in Torah, no, even if a person's physically less capable, he's going to have more wisdom. He's going to bring more wisdom to the situation, which is going to benefit the young people. The young people can't. The young people are just left bereft of the older thinking, wisdom. And it's very interesting that the whole modern court systems, and many, like for example, the state of New Jersey has mandatory retirement at the age of 70. Because what's the whole intention behind it? They want to force out the judges that have wisdom and bring in the new indoctrinated, molded judges that came out of law school with totally modern Marxist socialist thinking.
Yeah, you know what they need to do? When they retire, they need to make common law courts to analyze, to have a parallel court system that happens, and a parallel political system with actual wise people, that if they could actually bring evidence and first of all, they could probably judge fairer. People could voluntarily go to them. And second of all, if they can establish the truth and the reality better than the in-house system, then perhaps law enforcement and the people would give support to the common law courts rather than the indoctrinated courts. I'm just putting that out there.
Oh, it's brilliant, because it would have people with more wisdom.
And also, they can't be paid off already because they're old. They don't care about the sheikhad anymore. If they're doing this, they're doing it for the actual reason. They know they have a limited of time no matter what. And so that will be much harder to pay them off. So it'll be more truth will come out of a common law courts from retired people, retired judges.
That's fascinating. Okay, beautiful. Let's say a few words about the parsha.